What if the person hunting a killer slowly becomes just as desperate for justice as the killer herself? And what if the one piece of evidence capable of destroying a powerful family is also the one thing that could completely destroy the woman at the center of the story? That is exactly where Furious Season 1, Episode 7 begins. The episode is called Some Days It Don't Come Easy, and after everything that happened in Episode 6, Alice Black is barely holding herself together. Marshall is alive, Catherine has disappeared, Ed has taken control of the investigation, and somewhere in the middle of all this chaos is a flash drive containing secrets that Jay Easton would do almost anything to keep hidden. But there is something on that drive that nobody was prepared for, something connected directly to Alice's past. And by the end of this episode, the Easton family will be closer than ever to being exposed. But first, Alice has to survive the consequences of the previous episode. The story picks up after Marshall's violent attack. He had been drunk, furious, and waiting outside the domestic violence shelter when he confronted Alice. What began as a confrontation quickly turned terrifying. Marshall attacked Alice, and just when it seemed like Alice might not survive, Catherine appeared. Catherine shot Marshall. Alice was saved, but Catherine disappeared again. Now Marshall is lying in a hospital bed, while Alice is left trying to recover from everything that happened. And when Danny visits Marshall, he gets a very different reaction from Marshall's mother. Instead of accepting that her son attacked Alice, Mrs. Connolly tries to make Alice responsible for everything. She blames Alice for what happened. But Danny refuses to play along. He reminds her that Marshall was drunk and had been waiting outside the shelter to confront Alice. He wasn't an innocent man caught in the wrong place. He was the aggressor. Danny basically tells her that if Alice had reported Marshall, he would be the one facing consequences. Mrs. Connolly isn't interested in hearing that. Instead, she turns the conversation toward Alice's past. And what she reveals is devastating. She tells Danny that Alice had been living on the streets as a young teenager. She had ended up in a group home, and at some point during those traumatic years, Alice became pregnant and lost her baby. Suddenly, Danny begins to understand that Alice's story goes much deeper than he realized. She isn't simply an FBI agent dealing with a difficult case. She is someone who has been carrying unimaginable pain since childhood. But while Danny is trying to understand Alice, Nora is looking at the situation very differently. Nora tells Alice that Ed George has taken over the investigation. For Nora, this is more than an administrative change. It effectively ends her involvement in the case, and she isn't happy about it. Alice explains what happened with Catherine. She tells Nora that Catherine had asked whether she wanted Marshall dead, and Alice had said no. That answer infuriates Nora, because from Nora's perspective, Marshall's death could have helped the investigation. It would have removed another dangerous man from the equation. Instead, Alice chose to save him. Nora believes that was a mistake. She thinks Alice allowed her emotions to interfere with justice. And then she delivers one of the episode's most important ideas. Sometimes, she argues, people become ruthless because they believe ruthlessness is necessary to fight evil. In other words, if you become too compassionate while fighting monsters, the monsters win. But Alice refuses to accept that logic, and this disagreement between Alice and Nora is going to become increasingly important, because Alice is about to discover that her own idea of justice is becoming very complicated. Meanwhile, the authorities discover another problem. Hal's laptop has been wiped. At first, it looks like the evidence is gone, but then they discover something much worse for Ed. The information was copied before the laptop was erased. Someone made a backup, and that backup is now on a flash drive. Ed realizes that the case may not be as dead as he thought, and then he sees surveillance footage. Alden is handing something to Danny. Ed immediately becomes suspicious, because he knows that whatever Danny received could be the evidence that destroys Jay Easton, and Ed cannot allow that to happen. But Danny has another problem. He has taken Alice home. Alice is exhausted, she's vulnerable, and she asks Danny to stay with her that night. Danny agrees. For a brief moment, everything becomes quiet. No police, no Catherine, no Easton family, just Alice and Danny. And then Alice says something Danny has probably been waiting a long time to hear. She tells him she loves him. She says she wants to leave everything behind. She wants to go with him to the beach house. She wants a fresh start. But Danny can't respond normally, because there is something he hasn't told her, something he saw on the flash drive, something that has been haunting him. And when he finally tells Alice what is on that drive, everything changes.
Danny finally tells Alice the truth. The flash drive doesn't just contain evidence against Jay Easton. It contains a video of Alice as a teenager, and she is being sexually abused. Danny explains that he did not watch the entire video, but he saw enough to understand what it was. Alice doesn't want to discuss the details, and she doesn't have to. The look on her face says everything. The man in the recording isn't Jay Easton, but the connection to Easton's world is enough to make the discovery horrifying. Alice was a child, and someone filmed what happened to her without her consent. Now Danny has a piece of evidence that could potentially help bring Easton down. Alice tells him to hand it over, but Danny refuses. He says he can't allow investigators, lawyers, prosecutors, and strangers to watch what happened to her. He doesn't want Alice's worst memory turned into evidence for the case. He loves her, and that's why he refuses. But there is another side to Danny's decision. He is so disturbed by the video that he admits he can't stop thinking about Alice as that frightened teenager. He can't simply forget what he saw. Even though he loves her, he isn't emotionally capable of moving forward with their relationship in that moment. Alice is hurt. She asks him to leave, and Danny does. But he leaves the flash drive behind, and that little object is now one of the most dangerous pieces of evidence in the entire story, because Ed is already looking for it. Ed knows someone copied the files. He knows Alden handed something to Danny, and he knows that if the evidence gets into the wrong hands, the entire Easton operation could collapse. But Jay Easton has his own secrets, and this episode finally gives us a horrifying glimpse into the world he has been hiding. At the Easton mansion, Jay's daughter Emma warns him to be more careful. Then the show reveals something shocking. Hidden inside the house is a secret room, a private space where Jay meets young women, and Emma knows about it. In fact, she is the one bringing the women to him. This changes everything about Emma. Until now, she could have been seen as someone trapped inside a powerful and dysfunctional family, but now we learn that she is actively participating in Jay's behavior. She has been protecting him, cleaning up after him, and helping him continue. The Easton family isn't just hiding a secret. They're operating like a system. Jay commits the crimes, Emma helps cover them up, and Ed protects the family from law enforcement. But the system is starting to break apart. Nora tells Frank Choi what Ed has been doing. She reveals that Ed has been connected to the Eastons for years. He has effectively been their cleaner. Whenever something threatened the family, Ed made the problem disappear. That explains why he wants Catherine dead. If Catherine survives, she can explain everything. And if the evidence survives, Jay Easton could finally face justice. But Ed has one more problem: Danny and the flash drive. While all this is happening, Alice receives another visit. Her sister Amy comes to see her. Amy wants to reconnect, but Alice isn't ready. The conversation quickly becomes painful. Alice remembers being pregnant at 14. She remembers being abandoned. She remembers being forced out of her home, and she knows that Amy's experience of their family was completely different. Amy sees a family. Alice remembers betrayal. Alice finally tells her that she doesn't want to pretend they can suddenly become a happy family. She doesn't want sympathy. She wants space. And this scene reveals something important about Alice. Her anger isn't simply anger. It's years of unresolved pain. She has spent her entire life watching other people receive the protection and love she never got. And now, instead of hiding from that pain, she is beginning to confront it. But Alice isn't going to sit around and wait. She still has a case to solve, and she has one lead left: Elena. Elena is connected to Isabel. She also has information that could lead Alice to Catherine. So Alice goes to Nora. Together, they track Elena. Eventually, they discover her at a location where she is being controlled by a trafficker known as Big Man. Nora moves quickly. She takes down Big Man and arrests him. Alice focuses on Elena. But then the plan takes another unexpected turn. They bring Elena to a hotel, and they use her phone to call Catherine. The phone rings, but Catherine doesn't answer from somewhere far away. The sound is coming from inside the hotel, from the bathroom. Catherine is already there. Elena panics. She runs. Nora chases after her. And Alice is left alone with Catherine, the woman she has been hunting, the woman who saved her life, and the woman who may know more about Alice's past than Alice herself realizes. Alice has a choice. She can arrest Catherine, or she can use her.
Alice confronts Catherine, but instead of arresting her, she does something nobody expects. She lets her go. Catherine is confused. Alice knows exactly where Catherine wants to go: Jay Easton's house, and Alice tells her to go there. At first, this looks like revenge. Alice knows Catherine wants Jay dead, and perhaps Alice is finally willing to let Catherine do it. But then Alice explains her real plan to Nora. If Catherine goes to Easton's property and the police arrest her there, they may have grounds to search the house. And if they search the house, they could finally uncover the evidence they've been looking for. Alice isn't simply releasing Catherine, she's setting a trap. Catherine becomes the key that could unlock Jay Easton's entire operation. But Alice doesn't know what is happening inside that house at that exact moment. Because Jay Easton is already preparing for disaster. Jay is extremely ill. He needs oxygen just to breathe. He knows he is dying. Yet somehow, even with death approaching, he is still obsessed with controlling other people. Inside his hidden room is a young woman named Lacey. And Emma knows what her father is doing. She has helped him before. But now Ed calls. He warns the family that Catherine is coming. And if Catherine arrives, the authorities won't be far behind. That means the house could be searched. Jay has to destroy whatever evidence remains. Emma believes she already took care of everything, but Jay reveals that he has kept more recordings, more home movies, more evidence. He has hidden them in his safe. Emma is furious. She asks why he is still holding on to them. Jay's answer is disturbing. He needs them, even now, even while dying. Those recordings are precious to him. They are proof of the control he has had over other people. Emma finally snaps. Jay gives her the combination to the safe, and the combination is her birthday. Even that small detail feels wrong. Emma pushes her father. Jay falls. And suddenly this powerful man who has terrified everyone around him begins crying. He begs Emma not to take the recordings. He begs her to leave them. This is the moment Emma finally sees what her father really is. Not powerful, not untouchable, not invincible. Just a deeply disturbed man clinging desperately to the evidence of his own crimes. Emma is disgusted, but instead of walking away, she starts cleaning up his mess. Again. Because that's what Emma has always done. Meanwhile, Danny is following another lead. He investigates an old case connected to Nora and Ed. A death from years ago that was ruled accidental. But Danny isn't convinced. There may have been more to the case, and if there was, it could connect directly to the Easton family. Nora contacts Danny and sends him after Alice. But when Danny reaches his car, Ed is waiting. Ed wants the investigation buried. He wants the Eastons protected, and he's willing to threaten Danny to make that happen. But then Ed makes the worst possible decision. He brings up Danny's son, Liam. Danny loses control. He attacks Ed. And this isn't just a fight, it's a warning. Danny is telling Ed that he may be willing to play dirty, but there is one line he will never allow anyone to cross. His family. Ed is left beaten, but he still has enough power to make a phone call. He contacts the Eastons. He warns Emma that Catherine is on her way. And now the countdown begins. Catherine is approaching the house. Alice is closing in. The evidence is being destroyed. Ed is trying to control the situation. And Jay is becoming increasingly desperate. But then Danny receives a phone call. And this call changes everything. Investigators have been examining evidence from an old case. 12 years ago, Isabel Luna was found with skin particles underneath her fingernails. That evidence was preserved. Now the lab has compared the DNA with the Easton family. At first, they tested against Caleb Easton. It doesn't match. But the DNA does match a biological sibling of Caleb. Danny is stunned. There is another Easton connection. Another person who could have been at the scene. Another possible link to Isabel's death. And then the identity is revealed. The DNA belongs to Emma Easton, the woman who has spent years protecting Jay, the woman who has been destroying evidence, the woman who is currently cleaning up his latest crime scene. Suddenly, all of Emma's behavior looks different. Maybe she wasn't simply protecting her father. Maybe she was protecting herself. And that brings us to the final minutes. The episode ends with a shocking revelation. Danny gets the DNA results from Isabel's old case. The skin found under her fingernails doesn't belong to Caleb Easton. It belongs to Emma Easton. Suddenly, Emma's years of protecting Jay look much more suspicious. She may know far more about Isabel's death than anyone realized. Meanwhile, Catherine arrives outside the Easton mansion with Isabel's mementos. She gathers her courage and walks inside, ready to confront Jay. Alice's plan has worked, but she has no idea what will happen next. With Catherine inside, Emma potentially exposed, Jay desperate, and the evidence closing in, the Easton family's secrets are finally about to explode. And that's where episode 7 leaves us, with the truth closer than ever, and the finale promising a devastating confrontation.